Welcome back. Glad you're joining us as we move toward the end of these respectable sins. We have three significant ones this week: the lack of self control, envy, and jealousy. And how easily we can understand the relationship between the three of these sins that we tolerate so easily. When we lack self control, it usually bleeds over into being envious of others or being jealous of others, things that they have. And yet we may not be willing to work to have those things that others have, but how easily we can fall into complaining about them. So, looking at those sins, the lack of self control, it bleeds over into a lot of things in our lives. In our early days, I think we talked about the sin as temperance, having a moderate approach in terms of addressing many issues of life. But nowadays, it seems temperance is limited to issues with drinking or alcohol. The whole idea of temperance or self control, I think, is extremely valid, and it certainly goes unchecked to a great degree in life. And while it rolls over to envy and jealousy, it can also roll over into many other things. I like the invitation. The invitation is to manage ourselves, to be able to control ourselves in a variety of ways that are godly. So we are coming to the end of our study, Respectable Sins, and what a great treat it has been. This week we focus on worldliness, and he focuses on three areas: immorality, idolatry, and money, and how those influences affect us in our daily lives. Immorality, he raises the question: what kind of music, TV shows, movies do we watch, and how do they impact us? In terms of money, he has the question: how generous are we with our money? He makes a lot of points about how we use money in the United States, how very blessed we are, but how generous are we really in being responsive to God? It reminded me of the book that we gave out 3 years ago, I guess, which was a marvelous story, Life's Greatest Lessons, and lavish grace, the key character, learning generosity with God in such very simple ways from the early days in her life. And indeed, how much we can learn about the generosity of God as we begin to practice generosity ourselves. And then idolatry. What are the other areas that we worship, that we put before God in our lives? What a beautiful way to wrap up this great study that we have been engaged in all of these weeks. I invite you during Holy Week to reflect on the many questions that came up in regard to the text. Some of them you may not have been able to answer. And I invite you to submit those, and we will discuss them in terms of our Catholic faith and tradition as we move along. I also invite you just to bring them in prayer during this Holy Week and to join us in our celebration. This is just the most special week of the year. That's why we call it Holy Week, and it's a time for us to celebrate what it really means to be holy. And let's reflect on all of those great questions that were raised in this wonderful study. Thank you for your great effort and your participation.